Hershey Park just opened the newest coaster, Wildcats Revenge, but I think their next coaster will be coming a lot sooner than you think. Hershey Park is usually pretty smart when it comes to adding new coasters, but there's something going on in the nearby area that may cause Hershey Park to make one of the most unexpected moves in the park's history. A new coaster is already on the way to Hershey Park, and I think it will be a very unexpected addition and will open at the park a lot sooner than anyone's expecting. Ever since Hershey Park's 2020 investment, the park has been on a crazy investment streak, the likes of which we've never seen before in park history. That's why I think Hershey Park had something crazy in the works for the next coaster. And there are a lot of major factors which I think will cause the park's next coaster to open a lot sooner than expected. Hershey Park purchased a ton of new land in 2020, using some of it to unveil the brand new land they called Chocolatown. Located at the front of the park, this new land would be home to the park's brand new state-of-the-art entrance. The park would also add one of the most expensive roller coasters ever built to tower over the new land in front of the park. Pandemonium opened as the tallest coaster at the park and was really a perfect addition to Hershey Park. Pandemonium is a B&M hypercoaster, which means it is reliable, has great capacity, and really appeals to the general public. B&M has mastered the hypercoaster model, and Pandemonium was a spectacular hit at the park for that reason. After Hershey Park opened the brand new B&M roller coaster in 2020, there were rumors going around that the park had signed some sort of three-coaster deal with the manufacturer. The park began teasing something new for 2022, but that was just the re-theme of an older coaster and a brand new Zamperla flat ride. When we finally started seeing teasers for 2023 though, it seemed the park's next coaster would be a spectacular one. But it wouldn't come from B&M. The park's 14th roller coaster will instead come from RMC and will be one of the most genius and single best investments in the park's Wildcats Revenge is very likely the best coaster at Hershey Park today and is a very smart investment from the park's standpoint. Ever since the addition of Chocolatown and Pandemonium in 2020, the park has been busier than ever before. That's why we saw new improvements towards the middle of the park in 2022, and then the upgrade of the rough Wildcat in 2023 to the brand new Wildcats Revenge. Hershey Park's next investment will most likely be at the front of the park in Chocolatown. The front of the park does get very busy early in the day, but during the afternoon it can be a ghost town. There is only one roller coaster in Chocolatown, and there's not much else to do in that section of the park. The park just made major investments in both the middle and the back of the park, and the next logical thing for the park to do would be to add a brand new major coaster to the front of the park, giving guests a reason to stick around in Chocolatown, while also helping out with spreading crowds out even further. Hershey Park's next coaster will almost definitely be from B&M. I do see a few other possible options the park could go for when building their next coaster, but the most likely option is definitely something from B&M. The park is rumored to have that three-coaster deal with B&M, but even if that rumor isn't true, Hershey Park is one of the largest parks in the country, yet they only offer two coasters from B&M. B&M is one of the most popular manufacturers, and it only makes sense Hershey will build at least one more coaster from them in the next few years. The park's last B&M was such an incredible success that there's just no way Hershey Park wouldn't be eager to work with B&M again as soon as possible. There are a few different roller coaster types B&M offers that I can see Hershey Park adding as their next coaster. Obviously, they already have an invert and a hyper model, and they will also not be getting a Giga anytime soon. especially since they only just built their B&M Hypercoaster a few years ago. The flying coaster model and the floorless model aren't the most popular, and those are both models you could find at either Six Flags Great Adventure or Dorney Park nearby. That leaves the dive coaster, the wing coaster, and the surf coaster. If you asked anyone a year ago what roller coaster Hershey Park would open next, the overwhelming majority of people would probably bet on a B&M dive coaster. There aren't really any dive coasters in the surrounding area, with the closest one being 5 hours away at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. Dive coasters are also very reliable crowd pleasers, and they have been very successful in many parks across the country. Hershey Park had everything aligned for them to get a B&M dive coaster next, but it's not that simple. If Hershey Park were to get a dive coaster, then I would say the next most likely coaster for them to get after that from B&M would be the wing coaster. That would complete the three coaster deal with B&M. However, there are two major factors that came into play recently that I think will change at least one major planned coaster at Hershey Park. Before I get to that though, I want to thank you for all the support this channel has been getting recently. I really appreciate every single one of you, and it would mean the world to me if you could subscribe. I would love to hit 3,000 subscribers by September, and it can only happen with your help. But anyway, we have to talk about Dorney Park. All signs have been pointing to Dorney Park opening a mini dive coaster from B&M for the 2024 season. And if that happens, Hershey's got a problem. Hershey Park is just about an hour away from Dorney Park, and their next coaster likely will come a year or two after Dorney's. It wouldn't really make sense for Hershey Park to build the exact same ride model as their competitor down the road just a year or two after them. If Hershey Park were to build a B&M dive coaster, their best bet would be to make it bigger and better, and potentially even delay the coaster a few years until the hype surrounding Dorney Park's dive coaster wears off. Roller coasters are usually planning a couple of years in advance, and if Hershey Park was planning on building a B&M dive coaster for the 2025 season, it is definitely possible that they are already very far into the planning stages for the new attraction. Depending on how far along in the planning stages Hershey Park is, would determine what they would do once they found out about Dorney Park's new dive coaster. If Hershey Park was able to postpone or cancel their dive coaster, then I would bet that's exactly what they would have done, which would mean that Parks' next coaster would have to be something totally different, and the dive coaster would either be canceled indefinitely or postponed for a later park investment. If, however, Hershey Park was very far along in the planning stages, it is possible they would just stay course and continue with building their dive coaster for 2025 or 2026. SeaWorld Orlando just opened their brand new B&M surf coaster, Pipeline, and I'm sure Hershey Park has noticed how big of a success that coaster has been. It is possible Hershey Park may want to get on the surf coaster hype while it's still early and build one of the first ones in the country, which would lead them to open a surf coaster as their next coaster. I had this idea that they could theme the ride to surfing through chocolate and even create chocolate splash ponds and chocolate splash effects as the coaster goes through the layout. If they built this new ride in Chocolatown, then they'd be able to theme it to white chocolate and contrast the brown color of Candymonium, all while sticking to the Chocolatown theme. While I think this is a very cute idea for the park to do for the next coaster, I don't think it's the most likely option. Hershey Park has recently been building proven coaster models that they know will succeed, and with the surf coaster being brand new, they might want to wait a few years before building one. Then there's the B&M Wing Coaster, and I think if Hershey did ever build one of these, they should make it more of a family coaster. I think a smaller scale B&M Wing Coaster that was really well themed could do wonders for the park. The B&M Wing Coaster isn't especially popular, so making it into a family coaster would be the perfect gimmick to get a ton of people in line for such an attraction. The last family-oriented coaster that came to the park was built in 2015, so it's very possible the park goes with a family coaster as their next. Speaking of family coasters, I think it's possible Hershey Park builds a family coaster in 2025 and then builds their next major thrill coaster in 2026 or 2027. If that's the case, I think some sort of small dueling single rail coaster will look awesome here. And maybe the park could even build one of RMC's family hybrid coasters. Hershey Parks' next coaster is truly an interesting discussion, but I don't think a full-scale wing coaster is something the park would go for now that the surf coaster is around. If they do go for a wing coaster, I expect it to be a family coaster. And if not, I definitely think Hershey Park will add some sort of family coaster in the next couple of years. I think the dive coaster is still a super likely option for the park's next coaster, and I think it could come as early as 2025. But with Dorney Park likely building a dive coaster for 2024, Hershey's would have to be significantly larger to compete. The surf coaster is also a very possible option for Hershey Park's next coaster, but I feel they might decide to wait a couple of years before building such a new model. What coaster do you want Hershey Park to build next, and when do you think it'll open? 2025, 2026, or 2027? I'm honestly hoping that white chocolate themed surf coaster coming for 2025. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you love the surf coaster like me though, be sure to check out my video on which parks I think could be next to build a brand new B&M surf coaster.